Hi everyone, my name is Alex York. I'm an editor of the 30 Under 30 list, and I'm here with Zoya Hassan, a reporter of the 30 Under 30 list, and we are here to talk all things 2025 30 Under 30. Zoya, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the creation of the Under 30 list in general. It's, as you and I know, a very long process. As we like to say, like, this is our baby that we've been working on and now birthed after 9 months. So walk me through, for people who don't know, like maybe what the process looks like from our end.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it starts, right at the top 9 months ago. We start opening nominations pretty early on in the year, and we get all the reporters together to work on the list. And it really starts with us like reaching out to different sources, from like venture capitalists to like past alumni of the list, and also looking at those nominations and just start brainstorming who we think we call them potential candidates, like who might be a potential candidate for the list. And it really starts with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And then we just kind of keep on cutting from there and there and there. And then we get our judges. We start brainstorming, like, okay, who do we think are the industry experts? Who do we think is like qualified to judge these people and determine who's going to be the next 30 under 30? And it really goes from there.
Yeah. No, it's a very long process, and I think this year we got more than 10,000 applicants, so it's a huge pool of people who are trying to make the list every year. I want to know from you, because I feel like this is different for every reporter, what do you think stands out in an application? Because for me, I feel like it's like different things depending on the category that we're working on and the type of person that we're looking at, but what do you think really draws your eye?
I do think it really varies category by category, but like, for example, like I worked on the AI list. With that, I think what stands out in an application to me is how much information are they giving us about their company, not just about themselves. Like, I want to know your background, I'm very interested in your story, but like, this is Forbes, we are a business magazine, so I want to know about your business. So are you giving me numbers? Are you being, transparent? Are you telling me what your business model is? Like, how are you making money? When those things are missing, it's kind of hard to determine whether this is a company that can, scale, that can, because a lot of these companies are successful already, but there's also a lot of companies that make the under 30 list that we are like saying that they have the potential to grow. And that's why we're recognizing them. So I think it's really about like, how much are you sharing with us?
Yeah.
And I think the best way I would tell someone, or the way I tell people, is like, pitch yourselves to us like you would pitch yourself to an investor. So
I think that's a great way to look at it too, because I feel like a lot of this, like you said, some of it is like how much have they proven in terms of like the revenue that they've brought in, funding that they've raised, other sorts of metrics like that. But on the other hand, it's also about who we think is going to be big in the future and like bets we are putting on these people. How much of it do you weigh, and what are some of those metrics for people who don't know that we really look at to determine, one, the success, but also where they might go in the future?
With the metrics, obviously, like you said, revenue is one of them. But even if you are a pre-revenue company, then we're like, okay, let's talk about funding. Let's talk about who is backing you. Even if you don't have crazy amounts in funding, like, do you have credible investors? Does somebody really believe in you? Who are they? We also look at, okay, who are your customers? Do you have the big names, or maybe you have smaller names, but you have so many of them? So it's really just about the numbers, I think it comes down to, but I think it really varies by category. And like, you work on like media and marketing, which aren't necessarily number heavy categories. What would you say matters in those?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely different from something like AI or healthcare, where there's like a lot of investments coming in. I think for media, for instance, we look at people that are everything from journalists to authors to poets to founders of production companies, even a little bit of social media in there now, even though we do have a social media list as well. So I think a lot of it is about reach. Like, who are they reaching? How are they reaching these people? What does everything from like a follower count to a subscriber count on a newsletter look like? A little bit of funding in there, because a lot of these, even newsletter startups, will have some funding behind them. But I think it's a lot about the reach that they are drawing, and the kind of the numbers that way, and showing impact, not necessarily financially. Of course, we look at that as well, but I think it's a lot about how they are actually interacting with the people who are consuming their products or whatever they are creating. And I think the same goes for things like Hollywood. Like, we might not look at funding for a Hollywood actor, of course, but we'll look at maybe what their earnings are, and then also what are the movies that they're in, how are those movies being received, or who are they impacting with these movies. So I think it's a lot about reach and impact in a non-financial way, but like I said earlier, we think about the financials in all these people as well where we can.
I do think we get that question a lot though, like what if you're a nonprofit,
right,
or like what if it's not a business, and what if, and some people just have the question like, what if I'm not making millions of dollars, like do I have to be a millionaire to be on this list? So what would you tell them?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, like is there a threshold of revenue that we have to be bringing in, and I think the answer is definitely not. Like I said, for some of the categories that are maybe more money focused, or there's just more money being poured into it, it's a good like determining factor of if this company has scale. So someone in the retail category, for instance, like they should probably be making money because they are selling something and because they have a retail or an e-commerce business. So I think for certain categories, not that there is a threshold that's like a definite you have to be above even to be considered, but I do think it puts you ahead of the game a little bit if you are bringing that money in. But for a lot of categories, no. Like I think many people who make this list are either not making millions right now, or they maybe have just passed that threshold and they're really just kind of ramping things up. But like you said earlier, a lot of it too is how do we see this company succeeding in the future. So maybe they're not making the money now, or maybe they are slowly but surely increasing those revenue numbers. But if we can see that potential coming down the line, then I think that's a really big feat. Like for instance, on the retail category, if a company just got into major retailers across the country, like they just got their product into Targets nationwide or something like that, that's a really good indicator for us that maybe they don't have the money right now, but that retail money is going to start coming in with those sorts of opportunities.
And speaking of money, this year has some big money.
Yes, we did.
Our listers have raised a total of $3.6 billion, and that's a lot of money. And the most funded company is actually taking almost I wouldn't say a third, but almost a third of that. They raised that on their own. Cohere on the AI list, it was founded by Aiden Gomez. It's raised $970 million, so almost $1 billion.
What do you attribute that to? And because I know you worked on the AI list this year, looking through all of these applicants, why do you think they were able to raise so much?
Funding for AI overall is just like, that's why we introduced AI as a brand new category this year, because it's like kind of necessary at this point, because every company these days is like claiming to be an AI company, and that's because investors want to invest in AI companies. And like this year alone, like just between like April and June, investors poured in like $27 billion into AI startups just in the US. And the market for AI, I think, is projected to be just like over $600 billion by 2028. I'm trying to remember, but I think that's it. So I just think it's really about the fact that Cohere is like one of those companies that was able to prove that they have, a strong product, and that investors are just trying to find the next, they're trying to find the next Microsofts and Apples. And I think we saw that throughout the AI list. The members of the AI list made up majority of those big money folks in this year's class. There's so much money.
Yeah. And as you said, AI was a new category this year, as was transportation and mobility. And for those who are just looking at the list for the first time, we removed our enterprise tech and consumer tech categories and swapped them in for AI and transportation and mobility. Like you said, though, so many companies right now are claiming to be AI companies, or really do have AI that they are now implementing into what they're building. Do any that are not on the AI list come to mind, whether that's like people or companies who are implementing this, that you feel like really stuck out in using AI to then build what they're building?
On the healthcare list, the featured honoree, Anirudh Joshi, he is using AI to pretty much treat cancer, which is like incredible. It's right now it's just bladder cancer, but they're basically using AI to take like samples and images of tumors and then try to find the right treatment. And they've been really pretty successful already in implementing that with like 20 different hospitals. And Anirudh says they'll be all over next year, and we believe him, of course, because he's shown that to us with his numbers and his just his mission. So I think that's a really cool way to use AI. But I will say that with us, like on the AI team, it was a big challenge because every company says they're an AI company. We were like, how do we determine like who ends up on this list and who ends up on like other categories? And for us, we just really tried to look at, would your job be possible if there was AI? If there wasn't AI involved, would your job be possible if it wasn't involved? So that was kind of our thesis.
Yep. And I know that you and I, since I worked on the media list, we were talking a lot about Demi Guo, who is our AI call out this year. And she was one of those people who were like, is she on media? Because she's building an AI company that creates media, basically, that creates films. And that was kind of one of those middle grounds of like, this could be a media company because she's building a media platform with this, but it is ultimately an AI company, we decided, because the crux of her business is like using AI to drive this new method of content creation. How do you feel about the kind of usage of AI in terms of music creation, media creation, other sorts of things that typically an individual, like you said, like it's their own job? How do you feel like that has come into play with Under 30 this year?
Well, I'll say what one of our other featured honorees said, which was Shabuzi on the music list. He was a big proponent of AI for musicians, and he talked about how it can be a tool as opposed to replacing.
Yeah.
He's not saying that, like we should, like artists should use AI to like make a song and put it out there and they're not really putting in the work, but it was more like, like you can use this to put your voice into a melody and see if it works. Like, would my voice work in this song? Or like, there's a person on our AI list, Zoe Ren. She is not on our AI list, sorry, on our music list. She is building an AI company. That's another example that is meant to help artists like produce music at home, and it can do pretty cool things like brainstorm lyrics for you, which is, for some it might be controversial because then you're kind of doing the artist's job, but I think there's mixed feelings all around. But I think what we see on our under 30 list is like everybody wants to find a way to use AI as a tool.
Yeah, totally. Okay, you mentioned Shabuzi there. You did an interview with him, and you're covering him for this list. What was something surprising about either the music space or the celebrity space in general that really caught your eye this year?
I wouldn't say it was surprising, but what we really noticed this year was, well, two things which are really different from one another, but country music was just huge this year all around. And we saw that with quite a few listers, one of them being Shabuzi and then even Zach Bryan. So country music has been pretty big. And a lot of the contenders this year were country musicians. And I actually was like, okay, maybe not so many country musicians, because this is a music list, not a country music list. And then the other thing was, I think we noticed that a lot of the people this year have been like years in the making, and they finally kind of found their footing in the past year. Like Noah Khan is one of them. He's been 7-8 years in the making, and he had a record year, and he sold out stadiums, and he had a Grammy nomination earlier this year. So it's like incredible how so many of these artists, young artists, even though they're so young, they've been doing this for like 10 plus years. Shabuzi's been doing it for a decade. Then there's Chappell Roan, who once upon a time was singing Pink Pony Club outside the park, and with a little piano, and now she's arguably one of the biggest artists, pop artists right now. So I think that was something we noticed with a lot of this year's listers, was just that kind of going through that uphill climb and that rise to fame.
And I think that's such a testament too to the list in general, because things like the under 30 list are, with the rise of social media today, so much of it can seem like an overnight success. And that for me brings to mind Bobby Altoff, who is our media call out this year. And I think a lot of people saw her interview with Drake when that went viral and were like, who is this girl? Where did she come from? How did she land this interview with one of the biggest musicians in the world? And for her too, when we spoke with her, she spoke a lot about the years that it has taken her to like find her niche online, starting on, you know, different platforms, then not really hitting the wave of like the OG YouTubers, so having to find her footing then in TikTok when that came out, and then even on TikTok starting to create content for moms and cleaning her house and like, you know, being a nanny and all these other things that are not really what she does today, but it took all of those different steps to then ultimately find her kind of, you know, space in the social media landscape, being sarcastic and, you know, speaking to the camera in a way that a lot of people don't speak on social media, and ultimately then parlaying that into what she's building today with her podcast. So I think that that's like across the board something that's so fun, I think, for us as reporters to see is what has the journey been like to get here and how long has that taken. And it doesn't always have to be overnight. Sometimes it can seem that way, but there's so many steps that these people really go down to carve out their path.
You know, I've known Bobby since her TikTok days of the mom content, but podcasting, like we're doing right now, has just become so big. And I think it's one of those things, like kind of in that same theme of like being years in the making. Like we've been seeing like podcasting come up slowly, and now it's like taking over. There's Drew Afwalo on the social media and there's also our alumni who's on the cover this year, who you spoke to, Alex Cooper, who's just had this like record few years, not even this year, it's just been a few years. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your conversation was with Alex Cooper and what she thinks is coming next in the podcasting industry?
Yeah, I actually asked her because I feel like the podcast space has grown so much since she started Call Her Daddy with, you know, first independently, then with Barstool Sports for a while, before going to Spotify a few years ago, now with Sirius, closing a $125 million deal with them this August. And I asked her, would you even advise people to start a podcast today? It's so saturated, so many people. I feel like, you know, anyone right now is trying to start a podcast. And she said yes. She said this industry is growing so much and it's also changing a lot. And her prediction for content in general was the importance of long form and, you know, relatively high production value content moving forward. And I think that that's like a shift that we're seeing from what TikTok has been for the past couple of years. Again, a really saturated space, but very quick videos. You don't really need a lot of time or thought behind many of the videos that go viral on the app. So Alex really spoke about the focus on like long form content, bringing people back for like a longer period of time to sit and listen to what you're sharing with them, and how a lot of, whether that's like a studio or a streamer or just people in general, are looking for the talent who can really generate interest for that amount of time and not just be so fleeting. So it was fun to talk to her about how she's kind of walked the line of like staying relevant, but also staying in her own lane and finding the people now with her Unwell network that kind of do the same thing. They are their own voice for sure online, but they're able to kind of adapt to what the current media industry looks like, and whether that is through a podcast or through social media content. She's really building a network of people that she feels are going to be the next big thing in media, which many of them who are now on her podcast network are under 30 alum as well. So it's exciting for us to see that the predictions we've made are really kind of making moves in this space too.
Yeah, and speaking of saturated industries, I think, you know, a lot of our categories kind of are very saturated, and a lot of people are doing the same thing, whether that's tech or whether that's social media. You know, a lot of people are doing the same thing. So when it comes to how you determine if someone is unique enough, what do you look at? I guess it really varies by category, right? But like in the media list, for example, what would you look at when two people are doing the exact same thing?
I think that that's something that we come across a lot in all categories. I think you're right. For the media industry specifically, or even marketing, because I worked on that one closely this year too, I think a lot of people are doing something very similar in terms of how they're approaching people today. Like, let's take newsletters, for example. There's a lot of newsletters out there as well right now. A lot of people are either trying to niche down to a specific market that they're targeting or a specific topic that they're talking about. But even within those niches, there's a lot of people trying to do that. So I think it's really a combination of like, how does the way that they're packaging their information, the aesthetic or like branding around the newsletter or whatever they're creating for people, combined with like the type of content they're talking about, their own voice in it. It's all these different puzzle pieces that I think have to fit together to make their brand recognizably them. And like, for instance, we have a lister this year, Tyler Bainbridge, on the media list, and he has a newsletter called Perfectly Imperfect, and he essentially interviews people about their tastes and things, which at face value is like kind of what all interviews are, right? Like, when we talk to people, we're asking what they think about things, what they like, what they dislike, whatever it is. But the way that he packages how he frames those things, the aesthetics behind it, how he uses social media as well as newsletter platforms, and how he has in-person events now, like, it's a whole 360 approach to building a brand around something. And I think that really stands out today, because there are so many companies and people who have a product or an offering out there, but being able to create a brand around it. And I think that's why Alex Cooper has been so successful, is people don't just come for the information itself, but for the whole experience. And I think that can be said for a lot of different categories, and why a lot of different people have been able to rise to prominence today, because they need something that makes it recognizably them. Otherwise, there's too much online and in the world today.
And when it comes to the under 30 list and making the under 30 list, how do you kind of figure all this out? How are you looking at someone and determining all this information about that? What's your process? Are you going directly to the person? Are you researching them? What's your process?
I think it's definitely different for every candidate, honestly. Like you said at the beginning, the way that we find these people is a mix of things. We'll get nominations online. We'll reach out to investors or people in the industry to see who they are putting their own money into. We will reach out to past alum and see if there's anyone that's catching their eye. And then we'll do our own research as well. So what I think is really cool about the under 30 list in terms of who works on it is we do have a mix of people working on these different categories, and most of the people working on those categories are experts in those fields. So we'll have our Forbes, science and healthcare reporters leading the science and healthcare lists, and I think that provides a really great opportunity for them to take kind of the inside knowledge that they have of the industry and of the category, and really put that to good use. So they, whether that's through their own sourcing, our own sourcing, the investors and people kind of at the top of the industry that we know as well, it comes from almost all different directions in terms of where the nominations are coming from. And I think from there, then it's really about weighing all these things at once. Like we talked about at the beginning, the money that they're making, the reach that they're having, the people who have nominated them, and taking all that into account to make sure that the people that we are putting on the list are really leading the charge in all of these things. So yeah, I think it's a mix of those things, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions about how to make the list, as you and I both know, but I think really what it comes down to is standing out in our eyes, and not just our eyes, but the eyes of people that we trust as well, which is why we work with the judges too to determine the final list. So I think it's about combining all of those things and showcasing exactly what you do. Like you said, I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they're applying, is not sharing exactly what their company does, because ultimately that's why you're making the list, is because your company is doing something innovative. But yeah, explaining that really clearly, and then communicating with us like what makes you different, so that we're able to easily see that.
Yeah, but standing out to us doesn't mean submit yourself.
Yes. We don't need more than 3 nominations from other people. Sometimes we will get bombarded with, applications and nominations for.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't know if you agree, but for me at least, I think the people who end up making the under 30 list, at least on, like, for example, the music and AI categories, are people that me and the other reporters found from our own research. Yeah. Maybe they were also nominated, but we're obviously looking at the nominations. Yeah. But I think nominations are just a way for us to get to know you in a way. It's for us to know about you. But from there, it's really just our own reporting and our own research. So I think people sometimes put a lot of pressure on that nomination when it's like,
that's just the entry point. Yeah.
That's just like the starting point.
And that's why it takes us 9 months, because it takes us so long to really feel through what do these people tell us we're doing, and what are they actually doing, and what's the actual impact that they're having on other people. So, it takes a long time for us on the back end to get through all that information and source it elsewhere.
Who are some of the biggest names we've had as judges this year? I know we've had the richest self-made woman in America, Diane Hendricks. So that was
Yep.
big on music. I had Big Sean and Sean Batiste, which were cool. Who are some of the, you know, other ones that stood out to you?
We had Kara Swisher on the media list this year, which was really exciting, just because she's such a force in the media and the business media and tech media space. So that was really fun to have her. I'm trying to think of some of the others that we have had. Yeah, I think that the media list was great. The Hollywood and entertainment list was fun too. We had a mix of, and for all categories, we have a mix of alumni and just people who are experts in the industry. So Hollywood had a couple fun people. The art and stylist as well had Misty Copeland, who is a principal dancer at American Ballet Theater, and she is just a leader in a lot of, you know, in a lot of ways in that industry. So I think those are two of them that come to mind to me, but it's definitely fun to work with these people and then see from their perspective too, like why they might have scored an individual higher or lower based on their own experience and their own perspective. And I think that tells us a lot, like depending on which of the judges votes people which way, it can really open our eyes to like what might we be missing as reporters that someone who's so on the ground of these industries might be looking at. Okay, well, I guess to wrap it up, let's talk about any of the biggest numbers, any surprises, anything that we really want people to look at this year. I think for me, the $3.6 billion in funding was a huge number. And I also thought that the number of social media followers on our celebrities edit cut, 300 million plus social media followers follow just our top, 30 listers across social media and other industries today. So that was a big number in terms of like impact. What are some others that you were seeing or you're excited about?
Not a big number, but I think the youngest person on our list is pretty interesting.
Yep.
He's what,
17 years old.
Yeah.
17 years old, and definitely it shows that these, while our average age is 27, it ranges. And I think that that's kind of the point of this whole list, and what we love to see is not only do these numbers range so much, but the things that these people are doing ranges so much. So it's just fun to see all the different things that people are innovating on in many different categories today.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to do it all again
next year. Thanks for chatting, Zoya.